Hi everyone, my name is Elizabeth Chiswick and I'm a large animal client care liaison at the University of Georgia Veterinary Teaching Hospital. And as I was going through the coursework this week, I realized I had a really unique opportunity to be able to look at an equine skeleton in 3D. And this was super helpful for me to be able to learn parts of the musculoskeletal system. And so I thought I might provide this opportunity to help others be able to see this in 3D. So this is Bob. This is our skeleton who's decorated for Valentine's Day here in the hospital. And so he's gonna help me show the parts of the axial and the appendicular skeleton. So we're gonna start cranially with the skull. And so starting rostrally, we're gonna have the incisive bones, which just form the rostral part of the skull. And then we have the maxilla, which is the upper jaw. And then the mandible, which forms the lower jaw. The nasal bones form the bridge of the nose. And then the zygomatic bones and the zygomatic arch form the orbit and the cheekbone. The frontal bones up here form the roof of the cranial cavity, and then the temporal and parietal bones way up here form the sides and the base of the cranium, and then the parietal bones form the roof of the cranial cavity. And then way up at the very caudal part of the skull, we have the occipital, which forms the caudal part of the cranial cavity. So continuing on with the axial skeleton, we begin with the foramen magnum, which is the opening for the spinal cord just out of the occipital bone. And horses have 7 cervical vertebrae, the first 2 of which have names. So C1 is the atlas and C2 is the axis. And I remember those with T coming before X in the alphabet, so it's just a little trick to help remember them in alphabetical order. So moving caudally, horses have 18 thoracic vertebrae, and these are where the ribs or the costals are attached. And then on the ventral portion of the ribs, we have the sternum. And so the manubrium is the cranial portion of the sternum, the body is the middle portion, and then the xiphoid process is the caudal portion of the sternum. So moving caudally, horses have 6 lumbar vertebrae, and you can tell the difference between these and the thoracic in their spinous processes, which are these dorsal processes, and the transverse processes, which are these horizontal ones. Horses have 5 sacral vertebrae, and then between 15 and 21 coccygeal or caudal vertebrae. So continuing on with the appendicular skeleton, in our front limb, moving from proximally to distally, we have the scapula or the shoulder blade, and horses don't have a clavicle or a collarbone. So then we have our shoulder joint, followed by our humerus and our elbow joint. So distally to that, we have the radius, which is the front part, and then the ulna towards the caudal. And then the olecranon is this little process that forms what we would consider the elbow. So the carpal bones make up the carpus, or in a horse we refer to this as the knee. And then we have the third metacarpal bone, or the cannon bone. And then the second and the fourth metacarpal bones are referred to as our splint bones. And then we have our fetlock joint, and then our proximal sesamoids are these 2 little sesamoid bones right here. And then we have P1, or our long pastern, followed by our pastern joint, and then our P2, or our short pastern, and then our coffin joint and our coffin bone. And this little bone tucked in the back right here is the distal sesamoid bone, otherwise known as the navicular bone. So for our rear limb, starting proximally, we have the pelvis, which has three main parts. So the ilium, the ischium, and the pubis, which is sort of on midline here. And then the acetabulum is where the femur connects, and it's this the ball and socket joint. So then we have our femur, and our stifle joint is here with our patella, followed by the tibia. And horses don't have a defined fibula, but that would be towards the caudal portion here. Continuing on, we have the tarsal bones, or the tarsus, which is also known as the hock in large animals. And this area here is the calcaneus. And so in horses, below the tarsus is in the hind limb is pretty similar to as in the front limb. So we have the third metatarsal bone, otherwise known as the cannon bone, and then the second and fourth metatarsals, which are the splint bones. We have our fetlock joint with our two proximal sesamoids. We have P1, which is our long pastern bone, our pastern joint, P2, our short pastern joint, or a pastern bone, our coffin joint and our coffin bone, and then they also have the same distal sesamoid, which is the navicular bone in the hind end.